Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Dave's Faves. And today we're going to talk about Wagner orchestral excerpts, of which there may be 27,538,627,458,806 recordings. I mean, there's just too much of it. Way too much of it. Everybody does it. And, how do you find the ones that you just really love? Well, I asked myself that question because there will be a couple Wagner things in this series over the decades, I dare presume, because there are just so many things to choose from and so many that are fabulous. But when I decide I want to hear some Wagner stuff, I mean, just to hear Wagner stuff, not specifically like I want to hear the Prelude to Tristan or what, Wagner is one of those composers. He's kind of like, I don't know, sometimes you just feel like pizza, and it really doesn't matter what kind of pizza it is because you just feel like pizza. You just love the concept. And Wagner is one of those composers. You just sort of, he comes in chunks because these are all bleeding chunks or mostly bleeding chunks from operas. And, you just want a hunk of it. And which hunk of it doesn't really matter. It all just comes out sounding like Wagner. So when I want to hear just Wagner, the Wagnery, Wagnerish, Wagnerlicious Wagnerosity, I pick two discs, which are actually related. One is mono, one is stereo, but it doesn't really make any difference sonically. It's this. André Cluytens with the orchestra of the Théâtre National de l'Opéra de Paris. Ooh, baby. Ned Rorem wrote that fabulous essay, which I've mentioned before, about how Wagner really is a French composer. And he is. Because if you want to hear Wagner with the sex put back in, and I really do, I don't want to hear Wagner as a philosophical treatise or Wagner as some sort of, heavy-handed Teutonic God knows what. I want to hear the sex. I want to hear the lusciousness, the sensuality, the gorgeous, totally hedonistic, sensual, textural delight of his orchestration. And nobody brings it out as well as these guys do. I mean, even in Siegfried's Funeral March here, from Götter Dämmerung, you hear the harps going and the drum whirring underneath, and it's so marvelous. It just glitters, the whole thing. It just glitters and gleams, and I just love the sound of it. The sound of it is so extraordinary. And there are two discs here. There's a mono one and a stereo one, and like I said, they both sound pretty much the same. It doesn't make that much difference. So what you get here is and Cluytens, by the way, was just an amazing Wagner conductor. He truly was. My goodness, could that guy play Wagner? It's just a shame he didn't do more. But, we have these, and we should be happy. So this mono one, you get the Siegfried Idyll, which I detest. This performance actually is under 18 minutes, which is, if I'm going to listen to it, that's the way to do it. And then you get the Forest Murmurs, which are just silly. And you get Siegfried's Rhine Journey and the Funeral March, which, it's just glorious. Absolutely glorious. Unbelievable. And then the rest of it is Richard Strauss with the Vienna Phil, which isn't too shabby either. You get Don Juan, and you get the love scene from Fire Snot, that unbelievably neglected early Strauss opera, which as soon as you hear it, you realize why it's neglected. It's so silly. Oh, my goodness, but the music's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. The love scene, speaking of sex, is, one of Strauss's very earliest depictions of the act itself. That was sort of one of his specialties, doing things like that, like in the prelude to Rosenkavalier, or the sex scene in the Sinfonia Domestica, which Strauss's wife was horrified at, or, all of those things. He was very, very good at that sort of thing. And, especially in finding musical equivalents for the biological particulars of what was going on. And so the love scene from Fire Snot, or in German, Feuersnot, which is like fire snot is the way you say it, is the like first version of that. And it's pretty graphic and quite lovely. Anyway, this is just a fantastic disc. And the second one, which is equally delicious, contains the Meistersinger Prelude, the Tannhäuser Overture, the Flying Dutchman Overture, which is just great, by the way. I mean, all of this is great, but I mean, and the Lohengrin, usual stuff, including Rita Gore singing Entweite Götter, Ortrud's aria. Yay, which is a whole minute and 33 seconds. Well, it's not much of an aria, is it? Considering that the opera itself is like 4.5 hours long. And then you get the Liebestod from Tristan and Isolde, also with Rita Gore, Rita Gore was a terrific singer. And it's just great. It's just wonderful, wonderful stuff. And I just think that, Wagner is one of those composers that I can give or take. You know what I mean? There are moments when I just really feel like it, and moments when I really just can't stand it. And I mean, other people, of course, are a very, very different view of Wagner than I do. I remember just Verdi's description, of the first performance when he went to see Lohengrin in Vienna. And he said the music is very beautiful, but I felt guilty about the fact that I fell asleep, but then I realized that all the Germans were sleeping too. They went out of obligation. And I think that there is a lot of obligation when it comes to Wagner. People are sort of afraid to say, oh, God, it's boring. Because a lot of the performances of it are very boring. But the music is, it's unquestionably great music. He was an amazing composer. He was a historically important composer. He was all of those things. He was a horrible human being. I mean, we all know the story. But when you want to just hear the music, it's like, cut the bullshit, play the music. These are the recordings that I want to hear. This is no bullshit Wagner. And it's very, very best, as only the French folks can do it. It's just marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. So kudos to André Cluytens and the French National Opera Théâtre, whatever, the Orchestra du Théâtre National de l'Opéra de Paris, for just giving us Wagner the way Wagner should be played. Absolutely. So, thanks for joining me, friends. Keep on listening. And don't forget, the Dave's Faves playlist is down below in case you want to see all the other stuff in this series. Take care.